Now, the other thing I like to mention is this interpretation of Nama Rupa. Nama Rupa has very often been translated as mind and matter, or mind and body. Now, to me, that seems to be a wrong translation, because there are several suttas that indicate so. Now, in the Samyutta Nikaya, Majjhima and Digha Nikaya, they define what is Nama Rupa. Nama is defined as contact, feeling, perception, thinking and volition. Contact, feeling, perception, thinking, volition. So if you talk about the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates, the 5 aggregates are body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. Okay? So normally those last 4 things, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness is said to be mind, the mental partner. Okay? Now when you look at Nama, it does not have consciousness, Okay, it does not have consciousness. So if Nama does not have consciousness, how can it be mind? Okay? Now Rupa is defined as the 4 great elements, earth, water, fire, wind, and the materiality derived from them. Actually these 4 great elements, when it's stated earth, water, fire, wind, the Buddha does not mean actually earth, water, fire, wind, What the Buddha means is earth stands for hardness, Hardness is a kind of perception, You feel something hard, you consider that as the earth element. For example, this plastic, because it's hard, is considered the earth element. This is not the earth, this is plastic, right? So, Patavi means the earth element. Earth, water. Water means the cohesion, the property of cohesion, Because water tends to bring things together. For example, our body, because it contains water, we have a certain form, But if you take away all that water, this body will crumble, It cannot stand up, It cannot come together, Water has got the property of cohesion. Earth, water, fire. Fire is heat, Heat or cold. Cold is absence of heat. Earth, water, fire, wind. Wind is motion. So these are behaviors, Behaviors, these 4 things. Now, Nama Rupa, it is stated in the Samyutta Nikaya. Consciousness or Vijnana and Nama Rupa arise and cease together. And then the Buddha gave a simile, Nama Rupa and consciousness, these 2 things arise and cease together. They are like 2 bundles of reeds, 2 bundles of reeds which are tied together. Each bundle is tied. And these 2 bundles of reeds are standing, supporting each other, They are leaning on each other, okay? They are leaning on each other. So they stand together and they fall together. If you pull one away, the other one, if you make one fall, the other one also will fall. Right? And they stand only supporting each other. When you see this, actually, Nama Rupa means what, Nama Rupa means phenomena, Phenomena that is presented to consciousness. Because the moment consciousness arises, you must be conscious of something, yes or not? If you cannot be conscious of something, you cannot have consciousness. Consciousness only means conscious of something, right? So that something that is presented to consciousness, in other words, phenomena, the totality of phenomena that is presented to consciousness, that actually is Nama Rupa. And that has 2 aspects. The 2 aspects is a mental aspect and there is a material aspect. That's why actually Nama Rupa should be defined as mentality and materiality. These are the 2 aspects that impinge on consciousness, that impinge on Vijnana. Now, I'll give you some other suttas why I say this. In Samyutta Nikaya, there's another sutta that says, there is just this body and nama rupa outside, without. In the sutta, in the translation, they put nama rupa without. And within is the body, and without is nama rupa, giving rise to contact and the six sense bases. You see? In other words, nama rupa does not include body, Because here this sutta is mentioning there is this body inside and nama rupa outside. So how can nama rupa mean body and mind? Right? Now there's another sutta that says, by the arising of nama rupa comes the arising of mind. And by the ceasing of nama rupa comes the ceasing of mind. That means nama rupa is connected to mind, If you say nama rupa is mind and body, then you must say with the arising of nama is the arising of mind. With the ceasing of nama is the ceasing of mind. But this is not stated. It is stated with the arising of nama rupa is the arising of mind. Not the arising of nama, Arising of nama rupa is the arising of mind. Ceasing of nama rupa is the ceasing of mind. And then another sutta, Anguttara Nikaya, is stated, the basis of Sankappa Vitaka, which is translated as purposive thoughts, is nama rupa. So the basis of thinking, the basis of thoughts, is nama rupa. It's not nama, If nama is mind, then you must say the basis of purposive thoughts is nama. But here it says the basis of purposive thoughts is nama rupa. So from here, if you come to the conclusion that nama rupa means mentality and materiality, that means the totality of phenomena that is presented to consciousness, then you have a completely different outlook from what is now being taught. What is now being taught is that the world consists of mind and matter. Everything is mind and matter. Because when you say everything is mind and matter, that means mind and matter are separate, But when you say nama rupa is mentality and materiality, what is it presented to consciousness, then you slowly realize, as confirmed in two other sutta, that the world actually exists in our mind. You see? When you say that nama rupa is mentality and materiality, that means even our body is inside our mind. You see? How do we perceive our body? You see, to a normal person, the mind is inside here, The mind is inside here, the body is outside, the world is outside. But when you have an understanding of the Dhamma, then you realize even the perception of the body is through these six sense organs. Through seeing our body, through hearing, smelling, taste, touch. And so when you realize that the whole world is inside our mind, then you realize that the world is not real. It's like a dream. Whereas the other one, if you say that everything is nama rupa, then to you, the real world is very real, And you are trying to escape from the world, trying to gain liberation, to enter Nibbana. It's like escape from the world. Whereas that's not the real picture. You see? In the Anguttara Nikaya and the Samyutta Nikaya, there's a sutta called Rohitassa Sutta. And there, the Buddha said, in this fathom-long body is the world, the arising of the world, the ceasing of the world, and the way to the ceasing of the world. Everything is inside this body, meaning everything is inside the mind. The whole world is inside the mind. Then there's another sutta in the Digha Nikaya where the Buddha said, one disciple came to ask the Buddha, he said, where do the four elements, earth, water, fire, wind, where do they not arise? Where is there no suffering, no birth, aging, dying? So the Buddha said, you asked the question wrongly already. You should not ask this way. The Buddha said, you should have asked, where do the four great elements have no footing to arise? Then the Buddha said, the four great elements, in other words, the world, has no footing to arise, no support to arise, when consciousness ceases, when consciousness stops, There is no long or tall, long or short, there is no big or small, there is no nama rupa, the consciousness ceases altogether. But although consciousness ceases, then the Buddha said, consciousness is like non-active, non-manifestative, but consciousness is still bright and boundless, So Nibbana is a state where the consciousness is bright and boundless, but it has stopped working. It is no more active. Is stopped manifesting anything for you to see, to hear, etc. That is a state of Nibbana. So when we go back to Nibbana, actually we are not running away from reality. We are going back to reality. Only this world is not real. Then the other last thing I want to mention is that there are many wrong views in the Abhidhamma, which in my previous talk, you should listen to my previous talk, the one in Ipoh, I mentioned 3 serious things wrong with the Abhidhamma. One is that it is stated that path moment and fruit moment, they follow each other immediately. In the moment you get path, the next moment you get fruition. And I mentioned 3 suttas where we shows that the path attainer does exist. It's not that he does not exist. He does exist. 3 suttas were mentioned. And then the others wrong view I mentioned was that they said when the Abhidhamma was taught, about 800 million devas became arahants. Something like that. 800 million devas became arahants. Whereas there is a sutta that says all arahants attain their end here. That means as a human being. In other words, only human beings can become arahants. You cannot find any deva that can become an arahant. The most, the deva is like the Sudavasa abode devas, the anagamis. They will enter parinibbana in the heavens, in the Sudavasa abodes. But they don't become arahant. They just enter parinibbana. So somebody, they don't understand, they ask me, why? When the person enters the parinibbana, that means he's been arahant. I say, no. It's like this. When there is a being, when there is a person, then you can talk of that person as being a man or a woman, male or female, or a putujana, or a sotapan, a sakadagami, anagami. Only when the person is alive you can describe him in various ways, yes or not. When the person enters parinibbana, there is no more person and no being. So how can you talk about an arahant? There is no being in the parinibbana. How can you say as an arahant? Yes or not? So the third thing I mentioned was wrong with Abhidhamma was concerning the Bhavanga state. That Bhavanga Chitta, sometimes it is called Bhavanga Sota, the stream of Bhavanga. This is not mentioned at all in the Nikayas about Bhavanga. And not too surprisingly, if you study Mahayana books, you find that there is a similar teaching about the 7th and 8th consciousness. And the concept in the Mahayana teachings about the 7th and 8th consciousness is very similar to the Bhavanga Chitta. They are trying to explain a subconsciousness below our normal 6th consciousness, and also an unending stream. So this thing was something that developed later. And I explain why this Bhavanga teaching has no basis, because they are trying to say that the Bhavanga Chitta takes for its object. In other words, it's the cause of its existence is the last thought of the last thought of the previous life. And I said according to Paticca Samuppada, something ceasing cannot give rise to something arising. Something in Paticca Samuppada, the law of dependent arising, when something ceases, something else must cease, or several other things cease. When something arises, something else arises. So now they are saying that the last thought of the previous life ceases, then you say the Bhavanga consciousness arises. This is contrary to the Paticca Samuppada. The other thing is, they used to think that when a person sleeps, he does not dream. What happens when a person sleeps is that this Bhavanga consciousness continues to run. It's just a passive state. And this now is totally contradicted by science. Science now, they monitor a person who goes to sleep. They find most of the time we are not really sleeping, Whenever we go to sleep, we are dreaming. And this I have also confirmed by using the alarm clock. If you use the alarm clock, you set your alarm clock, for example, half an hour. You see, normally if we sleep, if we are dreaming, we don't know. But when we wake up, we don't know. If you have a very good sleep, by the time you wake up, you don't know all your dreams, You've already forgotten them. But if you were to wake up suddenly, say because of the lightning or because of the alarm clock or somebody wake you up, when you are suddenly waken up, you know that you are dreaming. So if you put the alarm clock, as I tested, you put half an hour, you get up, you are dreaming. You put 1 hour, you get up, also you are dreaming. 2 hours also you are dreaming. 3 hours you are dreaming. All the time you are dreaming. You can test yourself and see. And this is very natural because that is called asava. Asava means uncontrolled mental outflows. And that is the tendency of the mind to run, to create thoughts. So the tendency is so fierce that even in our waking state, sometimes you are not doing anything, you start daydreaming, right? Or even you are doing something, suddenly your mind will get distracted and think of something else. Because this tendency to run is so fierce, So even when you are awake, you are trying to guard your mind, still the mind runs. What more when you are asleep? You have no guard at all, When you are asleep, totally the mind, Hokkien they say, pang tua chia liao. Start running all over the place. So, those were the three main things I said that was wrong with the Abhidhamma. But there are still others, For example, in the Kathavatu, they say that there are no animals in heaven. But if you read the suttas, for example, in the Sangyutta Nikaya, there's one sutta about Sakadeva Raja. One day he went out roaming, and usually he rides in a horse carriage, which is pulled by 1,000 white horses, So he has a driver called Matali. So they were going out, having a good ride. Then suddenly the Asura saw them. When the Asura saw them, they thought, Sakadeva Raja is alone. It's a good chance to capture him, So the big group of these Asuras started chasing Sakadeva Raja. So he had to run for his life, because they always at war. So his horses were running very fast, these 1,000 horses. And then suddenly, Sakadeva Raja saw in front of him a lot of trees, a lot of trees. And on those trees were a lot of bird nests. These Garuda birds. So Sakadeva Raja suddenly shouted to his driver Matali. He said, turn. He said, if you, otherwise, you continue full speed, you will hit the trees and kill the birds. So he said to turn. So, this Matali, the driver, quickly turned the horses. So the 1,000 horses, very obedient, made a turn. And then, when turn, went sort of 180 degrees, go stun. So, when the Sakadeva Raja made a turn like that, the Asuras got alarmed, Suddenly he's making a turn, there must be a lot of Deva behind him. So they panicked, they also turned and ran away. So, from this sutta, you find there are horses, there are birds, and then there are other suttas that talk about naga. Nagas are snakes, And in the Vinaya, there's a true story about a Naga. Naga is a heavenly being, but basically he's an animal nature. So this Naga, he wanted to cultivate because he was ashamed of his snake body. And he wanted back a human body or to go to a higher birth. So he used his psychic power and he turned into a human being. And then he came to ask for ordination. And then he became a bhikkhu, a monk, and he stayed with the Buddha's disciples. Now, there are two times when Naga cannot conceal his body. One is that when he's engaging in sexual intercourse. The other one is when he's fast asleep. So, he was staying in this kuti with another monk. And he was very tired. He wanted to sleep, but he dare not sleep because he was afraid. He will turn into a snake body and they will know. So he waited for the monk to get out of the kuti. So the monk was sleeping, he dare not sleep. Waited until quite late. Then the monk got up, went outside to do walking meditation. So when he saw the monk go out to do walking meditation, he was very tired, he fell asleep. When he fell asleep, his body became a snake, huge snake. So maybe after 1 hour or so, the monk came back into the kuti, He opened the door, he saw such a huge snake inside. He shouted out in terror. So when he shouted out in terror, all the other monks came running. And then this Naga turned back into a human being. So later, the Buddha was informed. Then the Buddha called the two of them. Then the Buddha asked this Naga to tell all the other monks who he was. So this Naga had to explain. He said, I'm a Naga. I use a human body because I wanted to ordain and cultivate the spiritual path. Then the Buddha said, no use. Buddha said, no use. Your nature is such that you cannot get any attainment. So the Buddha asked him to go back to the heaven and asked him to keep the 8 precepts. So he cried, he cried. The Buddha considered him an animal. Even though he was a heavenly being, but his nature is animal. Because his temper is very fierce. So the Buddha drove him off. So from there, it is stated in the Vinaya, an animal cannot be ordained. So whenever a person goes for ordination, he has to swear or declare, I'm not an animal. So you see, from this sutta, you find that there are heavenly beings who are animal by nature. The Kathavatu says there is no animal in heaven. And there are a few other things. For example, they say that in a dream, if you commit murder in a dream, you create karma. But that one is not very logical, because in the Vinaya, a monk, say like he break, say the precept against sexual misconduct. If you dream, you do some sexual misconduct. The Buddha said there is not counted, because when we dream, we are not in control of ourselves. So it's not very logical. How can you in your dream, even you commit murder? It's only a dream, not really in possession of yourself. Then there are other things. For example, they say in the Abhidhamma, they say the moment you die here, the next moment you are reborn in another birth, But it doesn't seem to be so simple, because in the Digha Nikaya, the Buddha said, for a being to take birth in the womb, there are a few conditions. One of the conditions is that there must be a Gandhabba, a sort of being who's ready to enter the womb. And then in the Digha Nikaya, the Buddha also talked about a few types of birth, There's a type of birth where a being enters the womb unknowing and then stays there unknowing. Then there's another type of being that enters the womb unknowing and stays inside the womb knowing. Then there's another type of being that enters the womb knowing, He knows, that he's entering the womb, like our Bodhisattva, our Buddha. His mind is so strong that when he's entering the womb, he knows. What do you mean by know? Know means the thought must be going, isn't it? The chitta must be working, isn't it? So the Buddha said, there is a type of being, when he enters the womb, he knows. And he stays in the womb unknowing. And there's a fourth type that enters the womb knowingly, and stays in the womb knowingly. So, these are the few contradictions you find in the Abhidhamma and the Nikayas. I think I've talked enough, so maybe you all have questions you can ask. The question is, if the Bodhisattva path is not mentioned in the four Nikayas, how does one cultivate oneself to become a Sammasambuddha? As I mentioned in my earlier talk, I said the Arya path and the Buddha path is not separate one. In our Majjhima Nikaya, there is a case of Sammasambuddha, namely our Sammasambuddha, our Gautama Buddha. In his previous life, he met the Dhamma, and he met the Buddha Kassapa also. And from understanding the Dhamma, it appeared that he either became a Sotapanna or a Sakadagamin. Then he went to Tusita heaven. And after going to Tusita heaven, he came down and became a Buddha. So from there, I drew the conclusion that practically, most, if not all the Buddhas are previous life Sotapanna or Sakadagami. This is logical because a person who becomes a Sotapanna or a Sakadagamin, his existences are limited to not more than 7 on earth as a human being. So when, for example, like our Buddha Gautama, when he was reborn in the Tusita heaven, he was there for a very long time, millions of years. And after he came down to earth, the Buddha that he learned from had already passed on, right? And the Dhamma also had already disappeared. So when this Sotapanna or Sakadagami is ready to be enlightened, is ready to get out of samsara, when he comes back to earth as a human being, there is no more Dhamma, generally. It's very rare that he comes back to earth and then he meet a Buddha or the teachings again. It may happen, but more rare. So, more generally, what would happen is he comes back, there's no Dhamma, no Buddha. But he's like a ripe fruit, that must fall. So, there is something inside him that tells him he must work to get out of samsara. So, like our Buddha, because he was already planted the seed of enlightenment in him already in the previous life, he just had to get out of samsara. So, he was willing to struggle so hard to become enlightened. So you find, you see, a Sammasambuddha was a previous life Arya. So the people who don't understand, they think, oh, no point you become an Arya, you never become a Sammasambuddha, or you never become a Buddha. Actually, it's the Arya that becomes the Buddha. In the Sutta, it would appear that generally, they just listen to the Dhamma, and they have entered the stream. And the Buddha explains why. Namely that, as I mentioned earlier, when you listen to the Dhamma and you put all your effort and attention there, the 5 hindrances are suppressed. And the 7 bojjhanga go to completion. So there is this condition for you to attain Sotapanna. But Sakadagamin onwards, it appears that you need samadhi. You need because the difference between between the first and second fruition person is that the second fruition person has the first fruition person has abandoned, or he has destroyed the 3 fetters, the first 3 fetters, whereas the second fruition person has not only destroyed the 3 fetters, he has weakened sensual desire or sensual lust and ill will. Now, to weaken sensual lust and ill will, you actually need samadhi. You see, like this anger, many people, many of us, we have anger and sensual desire. And some people say you have to be mindful. You be mindful, then your temper won't arise. But this being mindful, you cannot control one, When somebody says something nasty to you, the first thing that will happen is that your feeling will arise first. Feeling in the Nikayas, feeling arises first. Then after that, perception. Then after that, thinking. Then after that, volition. It comes in this sequence, So, where do you have time to control your anger? The moment you hear something, the anger already arose. You see, so mindfulness in this case is not very useful. So it depends on your hindrances, If your hindrances are very strong, when your anger arises, you touch the ceiling. Whereas another person, if your hindrances are not very strong, when your anger arises, it doesn't go very high. Because it doesn't go very high, you can still control. In the sense that you get angry and then you decide what to do. Better walk away. Whereas another person, when his anger goes up the ceiling, then the first thing he might use his hands and feet and all these things. Like many years ago, I read in the papers about one man, a young man. His father scolded him. He was so angry, he took the parang and killed the father on the spot. So you see, at that moment, when the person is so angry, his mind was completely overcome by the anger. So he's temporarily insane. If you cultivate concentration, one of the things you will know, one of the indications of progress, you will know for yourself is that your temper goes down. You will notice, formerly my anger, my temper is so big. Now my temper has reduced, It's one of the natural results of concentration. We should study the 4 Nikayas because they are the original. So if you have an understanding of the 4 Nikayas, after that, if you want to read other books, you can. Because then you will understand what is the original teachings of the Buddha. Then you can differentiate between the right and the wrong teachings. Now, concerning the Khuddaka Nikaya, the 5th Nikaya, there are 15 books according to the Thais and the Sri Lankans. But according to the Burmese, there are 18 books because in 1956, during the Sangha Council, they added another 3 books, which everybody knows is not the Buddha's words. The 3 books they added was the Milinda Panha, Questions of King Milinda. Second one was the Neti Pakarana. Third one was the Pitako Padesa. So, you see, these books, although they know that they are not the Buddha's teaching, they still added them, which is very unfortunate, because it will create confusion a few hundred years from now. Somebody also asked me, out of these 15 books, are they all not reliable? And I mentioned about 5 are reliable. The Dhammapada, the Sutta Nipata, the Iti Vuttaka, the Udana, and the Tera Terigata. Those books are reliable. But however, if you study the 4 Nikayas, you find when you study the other 5 books, there is nothing much new for you to learn. All you need to understand and learn is already found in the 4 Nikayas. So even the other books in the Khuddaka Nikaya is more or less a repetition of what is already in the 4 Nikayas.